Okay, so I've been told that we at times sort of bury the lead a little bit. It takes us too long to get to the point.
I've wondered that too. I've had that thought where we talk around it for like 6 or 8 minutes, and then by the way, here's what we're actually going to talk about.
Yeah. So we could either do that again for the sake of those who have given us that criticism, or we could just graciously accept some criticism. People trying to help us be better at what we do, and we could just get to the point. So how about we just get to the point?
Let's dive in.
Okay. So abortion.
Anybody been reading the news the last 2 days? It's probably been somewhere on your news feed that something happened. Why don't you tell everybody what happened?
I can only say I can't say what happened. I can say what I understood has what I understand has happened.
I'm just going to the whole thing of if you've been living under a rock and haven't noticed.
What I understand is that there was a preliminary, like a first draft opinion in Roe v. Wade, but also the Cassidy case as well.
Casey, yes.
Excuse me, Casey.
Yep,
the Casey
right, yes.
Case as well. And this opinion was written by Samuel Alito.
Yes.
And these opinions are supposed to be circulated within the court, like just within the court. It's not for public release. And somehow it was leaked. And it's my understanding that Chief Justice Roberts is asking for an inquiry into how it was leaked. He wants an investigation because he doesn't seem real thrilled. Because in the modern history of the court, one of these first draft opinions has never been leaked.
Well, so part of the way this process works is they do a first draft opinion.
Yeah.
It may be the person that ends up writing the opinion at the end of the day with Alito as a majority opinion, saying it's a 5-4 vote to overturn Roe v. Wade. But part of what they do with these also, too, then, is there could be concurrent opinions, written also somebody with a majority of it, a different take on here's why this law applies to this, but also the dissents need to be written.
Right.
And so they circulate this stuff, and sort of all the pieces get put together so that once the final opinion gets dropped, there could be a current opinion agreeing with the majority but a different take on the law. There could be a dissenting opinion from the other side saying here's why we think this is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
All those pieces get put together, but this got leaked early, which in our lifetimes definitely, and maybe in the last centuries, my understanding has never happened.
It's never happened. And
definitely not on a high-profile thing like this. So
whatever went on, there's been some hanky-panky.
Yes.
And I've heard all kinds of crazy theories. I've heard it was a law clerk, you know. In that case, a lot of people are saying, well, that's got to be illegal, prosecute. The problem is that law clerk, if it was a law clerk that leaked it, it's my understanding that that's actually not technically illegal. It's unethical, and that person can be fired. That person can be even disbarred, but they can't be
criminally charged.
Criminally charged.
That's the same way. The law about this is more just sort of this is the way we operate. Ethically,
right.
We do this so that there isn't this gray area of did the opinion change between now and then. You'd only get the final opinion.
Well, and so that it doesn't do exactly what it's doing. The public is in uproar. Is in uproar. You're hearing all these differing voices who are screaming their heads off already. There are Democrats in Congress who are calling for some sort of law to be drafted and voted on that would enshrine abortion legally.
As a constitutional right.
Yeah, as a constitutional right. And it's like, wow, what a mess.
Well, and the mess, so for those of you who don't know, I used to work in politics before I came and started working as a vicar, pastoral and training, all that kind of stuff, the half pastor of the 1.5 pastors here. But when I think about this politically, I think about the various advantageous things that in the political operative kind of world that you could use this for. If you're on the side of not wanting this overturned, how much ammunition this could serve for the sake of raising money for elections, for the sake of raising raising your grassroots.
Right now, the Democrats don't look like they're in good shape coming into the midterms.
Yeah.
And so there are those theories I've heard that this was leaked in part to drum up support for Democratic candidates because now they can see, if you vote for the other side because you're unhappy about the economy, but look what you'll be doing to your right to an abortion.
You're going to help women's right to choose, all that kind of stuff.
And so I've heard that theory. I've also heard the theory, and this is an interesting one.
I wonder if it's the same one I'm thinking too, but yeah.
Well, which one? I'll just tell you what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So I've heard a theory that Samuel Alito himself leaked it. Have you heard that theory?
Well, I didn't hear that it was him himself, but it was somebody maybe within his office that was unsure that they had a solid 5. But by leaking it,
Now
it puts pressure to
it
say...
puts pressure on the other, just
who's gonna
like a
flip?
Neil Gorsuch, who sometimes is conservative and sometimes surprisingly not really.
Yeah.
To put pressure on justices like that to make sure they had the solid 5. So I've heard that theory too.
To demonstrate, oh, by the way, you flipped your vote between May and June,
Right.
whenever it gets the
Right,
final.
and now we all know it,
Yeah.
kind of a deal, you know.
So the same kind of idea, or I also heard it along the same lines of how the opinion's written.
Yeah.
Would it have gotten watered down some way between now and June? Now that it's out, you've got a solid opinion that is staunchly against, or staunchly for overturning Roe v.
overturning it. Yeah.
Would it have gotten watered down in the process to keep that 5-4?
And you keep saying staunchly for overturning it, or if it were to be overturned, and I think that's important language because already with this leaked opinion, there are people screaming their heads off, and that this is they're gonna do away with all abortions in this country. That's actually not the case if Roe v. Wade gets overturned, and I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding about what this means. If Roe v. Wade and the Casey case get overturned, it just means that it reverts back to states. That's all it really means.
Yeah, so let's back up to 73 with Roe v. Wade. What Roe v. Wade did initially was saying states can't restrict the rights to abortion. Mm-hmm. States can't make abortion illegal.
Right.
It didn't say that abortion is legal. It's just a weird...
Yeah, and it didn't make
language.
abortion a constitutional right, because it's not a constitutional right. It's not in there.
Yeah.
So all it would really do is revert the issue back to the states, finally, which, depending on where you are politically, you might believe that it should have remained there in 73 anyway.
Yep.
But So in other words, people in Colorado, calm down. You're going to have abortion. You know what I mean? Because your state will pass abortions. I've been surprised, and I said it in my past, like this last Sunday's sermon. I've been surprised at a state like Nebraska, which loves to tout its own family values, and yet failed to pass a bill that would have been retroactive should Roe v. Wade be overturned. Immediately,
making abortion illegal here.
Abortion would be illegal in this state.
Yes.
Not all states, in this state. And it failed to pass here, with some people who ran on a ticket originally of pro-life.
Yep.
They voted the other way when it came down to it because of pressure from activist groups. So what I thought was interesting there was that you and I have talked about this privately. From a political standpoint, Democrats need certain issues like racism to still be a thing.
Yeah.
They can't have somebody come up with a solution to that, because they get votes out of everybody being tore up all the time over racism.
Or you raise money off of it.
Yeah, or you raise money off of it. Republicans need abortion. They need the pro-life agenda kind of deal. Or if people feel like abortion has in some ways been settled in a more, I don't know.
It makes it less palpable. It makes it less urgent. It makes it less.
Yeah, because it's not like there won't be abortions in this country at that point. But if most Americans who are kind of more centrists, most Americans are not on either end, right? Most Americans are somewhere in the middle. If most Americans feel like, well, I don't personally agree with abortion, but that state can have it if that's what they voted for, and that state cannot have it, and you can just drive or whatever. There's already companies like Amazon coming out and saying
that they would pay their employees.
We will pay our employees to go to the next state if that's what has to happen or whatever. So if people feel like, there's a solution that's a compromise and nobody's really happy, but there's a compromise, it's illegal in some states, it's legal in others. I think a lot of Americans, it just takes the steam out of the whole issue. And that's one of those issues that for Republicans, they've kind of raised an awful lot of money off of pro-life, even though when you watch how they've acted at the state and also national level, they haven't done a lot to stop abortion.
Yeah.
They posture a lot, but they don't actually follow through and do a whole lot. So from a political standpoint, I think all of this is hugely interesting. What's
more important than the politics, though, right, is the theology that's at work here.
Yes.
Because we're talking about some conservative judges on a majority overturning what not me, not people at Harvard Law have said Roe v. Wade was a problematic decision. Like it's documented that
Yes.
it was a problematic decision. So it's not like this isn't one of those decisions on the court that might not need to be overturned. And to remind everybody, by the way, of your Supreme Court history, there have been other really bad calls by the court that have later been overturned. Famously, Dred Scott. So
Dred Scott and the Plessy Ferguson. Yeah.
yeah. So that it's not the first time the court got it wrong, then had to come back and say, "Oops, we got it wrong,"
Yep.
and then overturn something. So everybody needs to take a deep breath when it comes to that. This actually, because I've heard some. Let's just call them what they are. I've heard some Democrats already saying this is a threat to the democratic process. No. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, that is the democratic process laid out in the Constitution. First of all,
Yep.
the court has to be able to go back and say, "Oops, that was a bad call," and reverse it. Just like you have to be able to do that in sports. You know what I mean? You have to be able to
not only
say,
that, but it just fundamentally misunderstands the role of the Supreme Court, which is to interpret the laws that we have.
right,
And how do they
not to
apply.
enshrine something in the rock forever. You know,
Yeah.
it's
and,
not.
And if somebody's frustrated about it getting overturned, assuming that it does, that this opinion is valid and all that, and
Right.
Chief Justice Roberts did say that, yeah, this is accurate. This is why he wants the investigation, because it was leaked improperly, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But let's say that it does, they release their final opinion in June and it gets overturned. It doesn't mean that somebody that's, you described it in your sermon the other day, that's, protesting for the sake of abortionist health care and women's rights and these kinds of things, doesn't mean they won't have avenues to potentially go to the court again on other issues related to this. In terms of
Yeah.
how states individually handle this, in terms of,
So,
I mean, it
from-
doesn't shut off the democratic process.
From a political
Yeah.
standpoint, it doesn't shut off the democratic standpoint, the democratic process. And from a political standpoint, this is never going to be. This is going to, this is still going to be something that people shout about and they raise money on for their candidate and all that, because there'll always be related issues. And it'll actually fire up local state races
Yes.
even more is what it'll do. Which, if you're of my political bent, you like that better, because more of the things that have to do with my everyday day-to-day life are actually not decided in Washington.
They're often decided by your
they're-
city council or your state legislature.
In your state legislature. So I actually, if you're my bent, and I'll show a little bit of my hand politically, if you're of my bent politically, you actually like it if it fires up state and local level politics, because when you talk about the democratic process, that's where a lot of the stuff gets done and enacted. And I like it better when the things that are enacted are closer to the people that it's supposed to represent.
It's more tangible. It's more real. It's not only that, but I mean, looking at our unicameral in Nebraska, again, coming from working with it,
Right.
I could tell you stories of legislative races that were decided by like 6 to 12 votes,
Yeah.
really, really close. Where
Right.
your investment, your time, and your civic responsibility, your civic engagement at a local level or a more localized level, really matters.
Yeah, you can literally see how it counts. You see how it,
Yeah.
there. Okay, so you can see how it counts. And I think that's probably, as an American, I think that's probably better for America if people see that my investment and my participation as a citizen, if I can see that it matters, that's good for America.
Yeah.
But politics, we're going to put that in a separate box for a minute.
Let's pivot to theology.
Yeah, let's talk about what this means theologically, because what I keep asking myself since this leaked is what happened. Well, I'm asking myself two questions. The first question is, what happens if, because there happens to be a majority right now in the Supreme Court of conservative justices, what happens if Roe v. Wade is overturned in a nation that's not morally ready to face what we've been doing to the unborn since 73?
For almost 50 years. Yeah.
For almost 50 years. So I've never grown up in a United States that didn't have federally protected abortion.
Yep.
Not only that, let's also call it what it is through Planned Parenthood. federally funded abortion, right? Because they get a piece of the pie.
Yep.
I've never lived in the United States where the abortion industry, and it is an industry, wasn't making mad money off of turning human beings into factories for spare parts. And so this leads me to my second question. What really is the long-term impact of bad ideas? So in 73, the issue was women's bodies, right? And a woman's right to choose. And what we've actually come to understand through a deeper understanding of human sexuality, reproduction, and development is we've come to a place where we truly do understand that this really isn't about a woman's body. This is about someone else's body. This is about a body that's forming in utero. And that's a separate human being from you. This isn't about your body. This is about that person and whether or not they get to breathe free air.
What value do they have, and how do you semantically want to parse it out so that it becomes
right? And so what they said in 73 is that this is a potential person.
Yes.
This clump of cells is a potential person. What we know through further study, which is the way science does work, you come to a deeper understanding the longer you study these things. What we've come to is an understanding that this is not a potential person, rather this is a person with potential.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what we've come to through a scientific study. But you hear in the shrieking going on right now after this leaked opinion, you hear the shrieking. Oh, they're going to curtail a woman's right over her own body. They're going to curtail a woman's right to choose. They're going to curtail, and it's all about the woman and her body and her. So it's ignoring good science. Why is it ignoring good science? Because all it takes is one really bad idea to get out there, and there's this long-term lasting impact on a society, an organization, whatever level you want to, in a family, whatever level you want to take this to. Bad ideas are a real problem down the road, and they will continue to bite you in the rear end for generations to come. And the reason that I'm thinking about this is because I'm thinking about the history of the early church. Now, okay, I'm going to lose somebody right now because they're going to go, what's the early church got to do with abortion? But I think about how hard some of the early church leaders came down on heresy. This is heresy. You can't teach this, right? And they would come down super hard. They'd kick people out of the church. From our standpoint as Americans today, you can read the early church fathers on something like heresy or kicking people out of the church for teaching false doctrine, and you can say, man, that's really harsh, or they were narrow-minded, or just make sure you're lockstep, or where's the freedom of thought, or whatever. But this is a prime example of what happens when bad ideas get out there and then they get entrenched and enshrined. There are still people shrieking right now that this is an issue that fundamentally has to do with a woman's body when it fundamentally does not.
Yes.
It's got to do with somebody else's body. But as soon as you get bad ideas out there or incomplete science that's out there, well, people will latch on to that forever and never allow their minds to be changed as further research gives us a deeper understanding of something.
Well, two things about that. So let's talk about the church again for a second, early church. And, in my class right now, a couple weeks ago, we spent time talking about Gnosticism. And I'm not going to go into all what Gnosticism is, but it was a sect, it was a heresy of the 1st, 2nd century.
Right.
In some ways it's still around today in different manifestations, but
it's totally around. That's how I got a PhD. But anyway, go ahead.
But the point being, the degree to which you'd want to protect the church in the sense of one small little idea, even if it's a small little idea that worms its way into the ideas of the church, into the creeds of the church, into the confessions of the church, that then makes it somehow, is Jesus really the way, the truth, and the life, the only way to the Father? That somehow gets in the way of...
Is he really the only way?
Is he really the only way? Are my sins really forgiven?
Yeah.
Am I really sure and certain of the hope that I have in life everlasting?
Right.
And so if you want to protect those kinds of ideas, those ideas that God's revealed to us about who He is and who we are because of His work for us. Imagine how damaging it would be to have that doubt that's already there because of our sinful nature, but that doubt fueled by ideas. And so it's along those same lines. And so when you think about the idea of a woman's right for her own body, yes, there's implications if you're pregnant as a woman and you don't want to have the baby. Because you've got another person inside of you, and there's implications, and there's responsibilities for the dad too. I think. There's a bunch of things.
And to make sure that we're clear about this, I do think a woman has a right over her own body.
Yes,
I actually do believe that. The problem is the person inside you isn't your body, just because they're
in your body.
In your body, that's not.
Well, and to go back to the theological part of it, of looking at that being God's little child, for the time I was in your mother's womb, I knew you. The very hairs of your head are numbered.
Right.
I mean, there's a bunch of scripture that talks about it, but even aside from the, what might seem spiritual or mystical or,
Well, but let's not discount the spiritual, because that's what the society does. Because America fundamentally does not know what to do with religion. America fundamentally does not know what to do with religion. So let's not discount the spiritual. Let's talk about the traditions of the church, because we're talking about a pretty sizable portion of the planet calls themselves in some sense a Christian.
Yep.
Okay. The traditional feast days for saints and prophets are never on their birth date or what's supposed to be their birth date. It's always celebrated on what's supposed to be their conception date.
Because that's when life began.
Because that's always been the church's position of when life begins. Now, it was for different reasons. It was for unscientific reasons. It was for theological reasons. It was for the idea that in order to have a human being, what's our anthropology? Christian anthropology is you are a body and a soul together, right? So in order to have a new human being, you had to have the mother and the father come together for this act of procreation, right? But the mother and the father can't endow a new person with a soul. And so the old teaching of the church was that only God can endow this new person with a soul, and that happens in conception, that it happens immediately. And so there was this idea that life has always been conceived of as beginning in utero, in the mother's womb, whether you're talking about the poetry of David or you're talking about the feast days of the church. It may have been for unscientific reasons. It may have been for theological reasons. But as so often happens, really good theology and really good science find their way towards each other, not away from each other. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
No, I think about it this way, that the more we understand about science, the more it actually confirms what we know about God. Because
that's what I mean.
He created all of it.
Really good science and really good theology actually end up finding their way towards each other rather than apart. It's the really bad theology and the really bad science that ends up going in opposite directions. Because you come to something like, well, we're going to go down a rabbit hole if I do this. My point is, this has always been the position of the church.
Let's just stick with conception, because you've got conception happens, you've got the zygote.
Right.
At the point of a zygote, you've got all the chromosomes there.
Yeah, that's it.
Everything's there. It's not formed in some way that we can see. So my sister-in-law just had her baby this morning. So I was born this morning.
Oh, hey, congratulations.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so little baby girl Rory, and 7 pounds something, and you can see a fully formed human now.
No, but you don't. See, this is the kind of thing that kind of irks me a little bit. But wait, this is important.
I'm doing this for the sake of it.
But
making the point I'm trying to make. But yes, I know.
No, but this is important. That's not a fully formed human.
Very true. Yes.
We put so much into our brains and our cranial capacity that you wouldn't be able to have a fully formed human, not just from the standpoint of legs and everything else. You can't get the head out, okay?
Yeah.
So half the time you have to go to a C-section anyway, right? So what human development looks like is you have to keep developing outside your mama after a certain point.
For a good 20-25 years before your prefrontal cortex is fully
Yeah,
developed.
look at these kids at the school. Those aren't fully formed humans.
No.
They ain't a single kid in this elementary school with a mustache yet. You know what I mean?
I was using that language in the sense of how it gets described.
But that is how it gets described, and that's so problematic because it ignores the reality of what it means to be a human being. You're not done developing. At what point do you arrest someone's development and kill them?
Yep.
That's not cool, man. You know? That's the theological word for it. That's uncool.
If abuse and trauma happens for a little kid, that's arresting their development.
Right.
I mean, there's a bunch of other ways that we do it, aside from killing a baby in utero. But, so Scarlett asked me, my daughter asked me the other day, when a baby's in a womb, when is it a boy or girl? And I said, from what we can understand, and I said, admittedly now, too, I can't remember this from when we had kids, if it's 12 or 20 weeks, when they can actually tell.
Well, there's a difference between when they can tell versus from the time you're a zygote, you are a boy or a girl because you've got your chromosome.
And that's what I told Scarlett was
right.
We can't fully know yet,
right?
But God knows right away. You're a boy or girl right at the point of conception.
Right.
You're already a person right at the point of conception, even though scientifically, and that's what I'm trying to get to of a fully formed human versus when we can think we can understand what a fully formed human is or what we think we can understand.
But that's a problem of perception, not truth.
Yes, agreed.
And that's the issue for me. That's a problem of perception, not truth.
Of what you think you can see,
right,
or what you think you know versus what's actually there.
And for a species like Homo sapiens sapiens that can only see, what is it?
6%.
6% of the electromagnetic spectrum. I don't think we ought to put just a ton of stock in whatever we think we can see right now. Because most of what's real and most of what exists is actually what cannot be seen. And so, if I can't tell it's a boy or girl yet, wait a minute. Yep. You know, wait a minute. You'll figure it out here in a little bit. But God already knows because the chromosomes are there. So you already are a boy or girl. And that's the other thing politically that's just got me tickled with all this head rotating and pea soup and you know how some people are just all up in arms already over this early draft leaking like it did. All of a sudden everybody can tell exactly what a woman is again.
Yep.
Because we couldn't tell what a woman was before, and now all of a sudden we all can tell what a woman is. And where are all the men with their pregnant emoji from Apple screaming about abortion rights? There's not a single man who supposedly they tell you can get pregnant, which is not, kids, if you're watching at home, a man cannot get pregnant. That is not true. But you know, you look it up online, they'll tell you that it's possible somehow. You know, it's crazy what's going on in this country. And that's when, so that goes back to that first question that I asked. So there's the second question was the long-term impact of bad ideas and why the early church came down on heresy as hard as they always did. And what it probably has done to us in the last few generations that we haven't always made sure that the teaching was so strong that everybody stayed within that Orthodox Christian faith of the creeds. Like just hang in with the creeds.
Because you're again protecting the idea that somehow Jesus doesn't really love me or Jesus isn't the way, the truth, and the life, etc. Yeah.
But the first thing I asked you was what happens when just because politically you had an environment where Roe v. Wade could be overturned? What happens when that happens in a society that's not ready for that moral obligation? I grew up in a world that never knew that abortion at one point wasn't federally protected.
Both of us.
Yeah. Both of us did. What happens, you know, I hope to see churches stepping into the gap if Roe v. Wade is overturned, because it actually means we're going to have more work to do and more ministries need to be started.
Well, it's exactly where my brain was going, is thinking about us as the church, as the hands and feet, the brothers and sisters of the body of Christ.
Right.
You know, we're talking about discipleship right now. Mm-hmm. How many opportunities are we going to have to disciple? Let's say it's a young woman that's really struggling because she gets pregnant. She doesn't feel like she's ready to have a kid. How are we there to then walk with her to say, hey, look, you've got support. Maybe we're here as a church to offer support in a way that gives her resources that she needs, that gives her counsel that she needs, gives her whatever the pieces that are that she needs to know that fundamentally also then backing up even within all that as the hands and feet of Christ, that we're there to walk with people, to support people, to, you know, deal with the ugliness of life sometimes, because it can be tricky if you're 16 and you're pregnant and you don't think you're ready to have a kid or whatever the example is, but also just fundamentally to back up and say, let's start with the idea that we're all God's children,
Mm-hmm.
and that He loves every single one of us, and that He desires that all people be saved, including people that are in utero. He wants all people to come to Him, to know who He is, know who Jesus is. And we have an opportunity then to continue to talk about it that way, of the reason we want these children to be born is because they're God's children.
That's something that Anna has always said to Mari as she's grown up. Because my kid actually likes church, thank God.
Yeah.
So far, I mean, who knows what happens in teenage years, but so far she actually likes church. But there have been a couple of weeks when she's been like, do we have to go to church this week? And Anna will look at Mari and she'll be like, girl, you've been going to church since you were in my tummy. You're going to church again now, because she's been hearing the hymns, and as she's floating in a bunch of fluid, since she's been going to church since before she was born.
Yep.
And when you talk about life in terms of relationship rather than mere biology, and that's what theology gives us, which is why I don't want to discount the spiritual. Even if it puts us in a place in the public marketplace where people say, well, you're just holding on to religious ideas and that's why you believe what you believe. But the spiritual matters because the spiritual has more to do with those human connections than the simple biology of it does. You can talk about the development of a child from a biological standpoint. You can even talk about the relationships and the bonding and the attachments that form because of chemicals like oxytocin and those kinds of things. You can talk about all those things. I think it's easier, though, for my wife to say to my daughter, girl, you've been going to church since you were in my tummy. There's a way of talking about these relationships and the sanctity of life and the beauty of life when it's talked about from a theological standpoint that frankly more resembles poetry or something really beautiful rather than just the facts, man. I like the facts because again, good science finds its way towards good theology. But there's a way of speaking, and I know I'm biased. I am a theologian, but there's a way of speaking theologically that I think is beautiful and really deeply affirms what it means to be human and what it means to have a family and what it means to, even if your family doesn't match whatever you thought it should match. You're a single mom. You're not the husband and the wife and the kid and the dog and the whatever. Even if life didn't turn out the way you hoped it would as a kid when you were dreaming about what it would mean to be an adult, maybe you dreamed of a family. Maybe that's not how it's happening for you right now. But there's a reality to a church family, if you have enough people wrapping around you, that makes you still an integral part of this community of believers. And none of us are in a perfect situation.
Like life is messy, life is ugly.
Life is messy for everybody. And so what we're doing as a church is that we're all still in process and we're all moving with Jesus Christ together. And we're all moving to eternity with Christ. And there's a beauty in that makes life worth taking the risk on, right?
Yeah. Well, the risk on, but and again, too, thinking about the idea that, I love how you said that, but going back to the idea of discipleship and that we as the church wrapping our arms around somebody, and maybe it is somebody that's going through a teenage pregnancy, and really struggling, and maybe it would have been the idea of I should just have an abortion because I can't handle this right now. But then to sit down with them and say, look, God knows exactly the spot that you're in. God loves you. Mm-hmm. God also knows exactly the spot that your child in utero right now is in, and knows exactly the plans that He has for him. And I know the plans that I have for you. Jeremiah 29, which gets misquoted sometimes, or whatever other kinds of ways that you could point to God's revealed Word and how much He loves and cares for every single child on this earth, and wants all people to be saved because of His work, and to remind a soon-to-be teenage mom that your child is beloved by God.
Well, but nowadays it's not just teenage moms. I mean, let's remember where we're at, because this has been almost 50 years of Roe v. Wade, and so now a lot of these abortions are being done by women in their 20s who are just single and living the life, and they don't, And again, I go back to that same question: what happens when Roe v. Wade gets overturned in a culture that is not morally prepared for what familial responsibility really looks like? this is not Roe v. Wade gets overturned. If you're on the other side of this issue and you happen to be hearing this podcast because you could stand for this many minutes to listen to a viewpoint that's not like yours, which is really uncommon in America today, by the way. So first of all,
thank you for listening.
Yeah, if you're that person, thank you for listening, and kudos to you, right? But if you've been able to hang with this podcast this long and you're listening to this, I gotta try to comfort you, and it may be cold comfort. This is not over. Yes. Even if Roe v. Wade gets overturned, if anybody thinks that this is a settled issue, they're wrong. It's not going to be settled. But what I'm questioning then is, because it won't be settled, and because states will do different things and enact different laws, what happens in terms of this nation when this nation is not ready for the moral responsibility of life, quite frankly?
Yep.
We've turned life into a monetized commodity. We've turned life into a convenience. We've turned life into a, I'm really sitting here as a pastor, going,
I think
there's going to be some fun sermons. You know what I mean?
It's like there's going to be a lot of work to do.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of work to do. Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of, to use the term shrieking earlier, there's going to be a lot of shrieking.
Yeah,
And we got to be ready to show up with love, and show up with care, and show up with grace, and show up with the truth.
But I really hope that the church as a whole, because there's already the church bodies that are waffling on all kinds of doctrines.
Yes.
In the United States. I hope, my prayer is that the American church will stand strong, because you talk about the long-lasting effect of bad ideas. To somehow get life wrong, or who the Creator is, and to lose that mystery. Let's go ahead and use the M word. To lose that mystery is to lose a piece of what it means to be human. And it won't just be about abortion. It'll be about transhumanism, with the integration of technology into people as biological organisms. It'll be about different things that they think they can do coming down the pike with human lifespan and longevity.
Say an end-of-life decision type stuff.
Yeah, it's not just this issue. It's related to a bunch of other issues that all have to do with life. And if the church doesn't stand strong on the orthodox teachings of the Scriptures,
the life is sacred because it's a gift from God.
Jesus said, once you've lost your salt, you're good for nothing.
Yeah.
This culture is not ready for the moral responsibility of Roe v. Wade to be overturned after 50 years of this ridiculousness and this genocide against our own people. How many millions of people have we killed? So we're not ready for the moral responsibility as a nation. What helps is that there are still people who follow Jesus who live in this country, who are driving this talk about pro-life and standing up for the unborn who cannot speak for themselves, right? Those are the people driving this. It's just like the slavery issue all over again. The people driving that issue of abolition were all Christians.
Yep.
And the people and so that was a life issue.
Yes.
The dignity of life in your createdness. Just because you got more melanin in your skin doesn't make you less human, right? So just like that, it was Christians driving that issue. It's Christians driving this pro-life issue as well. And so if the nation as a whole isn't ready, and I don't believe this nation as a whole is ready for the moral responsibility of life, if Christians don't continue to act as salt and light, if the churches don't continue to act as salt and light, then this isn't going to end the way people think it's going to end anyway, even if Roe v. Wade gets overturned.
Agreed. And I think, too, that as we're all thinking about this, about how we can show up for each other and show up for moments that you might hear the shrieking, again, to use that word.
Right.
Is that let's not show up with shame. Let's not show up with, finger pointing or condescension or anything. Let's show up with love and grace and mercy. Truth.
But that's where I'm worried. I'm not worried that groups like the Lutheran Church will somehow fail to show up with love and grace and mercy. I converted into Lutheranism. I've been a Lutheran long enough to know there's a marked difference in the culture between Lutheran Church Missouri Synod congregations and other, let's just be honest, other denominations. I mean, I can tell you anecdotally in my own life experience that I've experienced a level of love, grace, and mercy in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod that I didn't know was possible. And I'm not worried about our people at least showing up with love, grace, and mercy. I'm more worried about somehow waffling on the truth.
Yep. And my point of bringing that up is it has to be both.
It does have to be both. I mean, but then again, that's a very Lutheran thing to say, law and gospel.
Yes.
So I'll be over here representing law, and you be over there representing gospel, right? And then we can, but that's why, again, bad ideas stick around for generations. You can't waffle at a moment like this on what the truth is, and you can't be ashamed of the truth. You have to be willing to say it out loud, even if there's shrieking and pulling of hair, and you have to be willing to say it. You can say it in a loving way. You just can't waffle on what the truth is.
Amen.
And at a moment like this, for the church to continue to be that salt and light in this particular culture that isn't ready for this. But what an opportunity to love on our neighbors in a way that, frankly, they won't even see it as loving. People are on the other side of this issue. They're not going to see the church acting as salt and light and loving, in a loving way, trying to hold this society together. They're not going to, we're not going to get a star for this. We're not going to get a ribbon or a trophy for this.
Way to go.
Yeah. But this is what love looks like. It's not just, oh, they're there. That's not what love looks like. What love looks like is I'm going to show up and serve you whether or not you fight me the whole way or not, which is what you do with a baby.
Well, I was just thinking about Eleanor.
Yeah.
This happened a little while back where she started running out, looked like she was going to run on the street, and I yelled at her.
Right.
And I made her cry because it was the dad voice.
Yeah, but you
I didn't want to run on the street.
Yeah. So, and I'm not saying that our neighbors are children in their thinking, although sometimes both Christians and non-Christians can be very childlike in their thinking.
True.
But that's all people. That's just human beings, right? And so what I'm trying to say is that God takes care of us that way, whether or not we realize that what He's doing is loving. In the same way, we take our cue from our Heavenly Father and we try to love this society, to hold it together in peace, whether or not we get thanked for it or we get yelled at for it.
Yep.
That's still showing love, and we have to be people with enough intestinal fortitude. Guts.
Yeah.
We have to be people with enough intestinal fortitude to work for society, to hold together. Otherwise, again, this society at this point can't even tell you what a woman is. Like, this society doesn't understand that it's in trouble sometimes, and so the church needs to work as salt and light to hold this society together. Otherwise, it's going to disintegrate.
Yep.
And one of the ways we can do that is by loving people when they're going to be shrieking, their heads are going to be spinning, they're going to be pulling their hair out.
And you might get yelled at, and you love them anyway, even if you
get
get yelled at.
Love them anyway. It's okay. Like, my love for you, and as a fellow American and as a brother who follows after Jesus Christ, that's not dependent upon your reaction today, right? I mean, that's some ideas, the good ones. We've talked a lot about bad ideas. Some ideas, the good ones, are worth living your whole life for. The good ideas are worth dying for. Yes, they are. The good ideas are worth getting yelled at for.
Getting down and washing somebody's feet.
The good ideas are worth washing somebody's feet. The good ideas are worth everything.
Yep.
And they matter, and they can make an impact. So, well, I mean, I don't know where to land the plane here, but this has been a fun conversation. And I hope it's been a fun conversation for you if you're listening, tuning in,
and frankly, maybe something we come back at again to see how things pan out over the next few weeks.
We're not done.
No.
This is going to be in the news for however long. But for today, maybe we just kind of stop here.
I guess I'll leave it at this, because who knows who's listening. To know that we're open to feedback, open to questions, open to comments. If there's anything about this that we've said, if you're the person that's on the other side of this issue and is really struggling or mad at us for what we said, really mean what we said, that we'd be willing to talk to somebody. So
Yeah.
if you're out there and you want to do that,
Just go to our website, go to our church's website. So Faith Lutheran here in Lincoln, Nebraska. Go to our website, and you can write us an email from the website, and we'll respond to you. Okay, so
all right,
great. Catch you next time.
see you.